wonderful to be back here again. And Diwan, you have received a great number of praises. And when you came here, you said my head's going to get swollen. Well, I'll help you to further swell your head because I think you need it to protect yourself from both friends and enemies if there are. Uh, it's special because as there's a sort of link between last time when I came, when I gave a talk on Amrita Sher-Gil through the retake of Amrita. And now the audience has the satisfaction of seeing these original photographs. But alongside that, the source of them, or the person who provided the basic analog image, is Umrao Singh Sher-Gil. As I said, my work on the Sher-Gil archive, in a sense, introduced me to Umrao Singh beyond just being the family photographer. And as we know, from the late 19th century, photography reached from the upper classes to the middle classes, and it is the dominant form, in a sense, the family photograph, the family album. And one doesn't take family albums very seriously. But I had a sense that there was something more to them, and bit by bit talking to people, and I think that finally using them as an artwork made people realize that there was a much bigger project in Umrao Singh's photographing his family as really that he could be named, and I've sort of indicated it, but now supported by photographic historians, that he too can be considered a pioneer of modern Indian photography. So you have both Umrao Singh and my work on Amrita. This evening, and I'll try to be short and fairly precise. First of all, to say that I am showing about 4 sets of work, and I'm not showing the work which Diwan mentioned is a series called Gaga Waka, which was my crossing over into making garments that were both as sculptural garments in a manner of speaking, but also garments that could be worn and performed by professional models. So this was done about a year and a half ago. I've kept that out because there is a sort of connection, because the work that I'll be showing you is mainly based on, what shall I say, the found object or the ready-made. And if I can add to the centenary of Amrita Sher-Gil, that we have 100 years, I will add to that also the information that the concept of the ready-made is also 100 years old, almost to date, and that is when Duchamp first made his sculptural object of a bicycle wheel. I think the date is possibly 1914. And that other centenary, in fact, informs my work in the last 20 years when I shifted away from painting to make objects, to make installations, so that the ready-made provides a kind of both material but also a language to make art. And it puts to question the notion of craft and skill and finish, that artists don't necessarily have to have that. I'm not saying that I'm against it, and great drawers and craftspeople are great artists, but it also opened out that if you have an idea, if you have a concept, and it's intelligent, provocative enough, you can actually make that kind of art for the whole of your life. And there are many, many examples in 20th century art post the Duchampian position that have made that. So his position started informing my work in the 1990s. What I'm going to show is work done in the last 5 years. And as I said, one aspect of it, or its centrality, is the fragment, is the found object. In fact, the discarded object. My previous show was called Trash. And so I'm interested in the garbage, the sort of sad and pathetic thing that you kick or throw away, and how can that make art? How does that, in the way that it accumulates, start developing a view of the world, of landscape, of comments about society. And I think that it is this accumulation of the fragment which could be recognized or abstracted, which informs the work that you will see. So can we start the video? I have started the series with this work called 12-Bed Ward, and it was and is about the lowest throwaway thing is literally the sole of shoes. And when the waste picker picks up an old shoe, I was told that it has no value. Only when he cuts off the trade name on the top, that the sole can be recycled and he can or she earn a few pennies or rupees. And this work, as you can see, is an installation, because once the lights go off, a very major part of this work, the non-physical aspect of it, is the shadow. And the shadow creates a kind of floating world in a way. It's a form that is, in a sense, like a lozenge, like kind of quite mysterious. And almost everybody realizes that they are walking on a shadow, and in some sense, they are walking on the work of art. And the material, the physical material that are the soles of the shoes, are the kind of sensuous, very poignant object, which both when you rip a shoe, you see the inside of the sole, which you rarely do. You see the bottom of the sole which touches the ground, but you don't see the inside. And today's modern shoes have all sorts of fascinating designs, structures, architecture. So the viewer walks through this room which is melancholic, which brings up many associations from images of the concentration camp, from a hospital, from a jail ward, and the melancholy of the night shelter and its sort of poignancy was the centrality of this work. I was working alongside with waste pickers, an organization called Chintan, headed by this very dynamic woman called Bharti Chaturvedi. And it's through them that I have evolved a series of works which the very central core of it is trash, is garbage. So you see here how the vividness, the graphic vividness of the shadow becomes very central to the vulnerable nature of the artwork, and that installation arts very often has no fixed frame. As I said, once the lights go off, the main graphic element disappears. And so I think that the exploration of meaning through introducing a simple object like a 25-watt bulb is what makes that work. This work is also based on another word I will bring in, a kind of archive or an archaeological digging into what exists around me or what I collect. And it is from this archaeology in a way that I have constructed this work. This work also is based again on the found object, on things that I have collected, which have come from different sources, from architects' building plans to other things, and then slowly it moves in to, in a sense, a kind of archaeological grave of my own installation, because installation art, once you bring it back, it's all split into parts. So there is no object, no sensuous object which can be there to be seen, and it is just like a throwaway object, and either you're very careful in keeping it or not so careful, and I'm one of those people who's not so careful. And recently a work of mine was attacked by white tans and created beautiful patterns on a work of mine, which I used later on, in fact, as a backdrop of Gaga Waka. So you see here, this is a kind of city, a city in the night, and it's all made up of all sorts of objects you'll see, but you also see, those who have an architectural background, that they are actually models from architectural friends of mine to show both public and private buildings. And then as you move across, these are different works of mine which are lying in the studio, and which I have then filmed. And at the end of this, you will see how this is, in a sense, performed as a video. There is again a deep melancholy in many of my works, and at the end of it, this is burnt, this is torch, set to light. You will see the clips for about a few minutes. This work was done soon after the riots in Gujarat and the terrifying killing of Muslims. But it was also done after the assault on Iraq in the what I call the Second Gulf War, and or the Second Gulf War. And many people did think that there was this aspect of the aerial surveillance view, the kind of tracking of this sort of light that is looking, for the enemy, for somebody. And so I work a relationship between the personal and this mapping of a city, of something which looks like a kind of a dump. And these are all various works of mine which people who know them would recognize. So as in this work, there's both nearness and distance between the personal, and in this case, as I said, there are many works which are mine, and so there's a kind of archival work, an archaeological digging of my own past. I then got interested in what we think the city to be, and how, through again the use of the word fragment, how I could maybe construct a whole landscape, a whole city out of garbage. And as I said, I had this contact with the Chintan people, and in attending many of their meetings, I realized the enormous vulnerability and fragility of how a large percentage of the population live, and under constant threat of being of their homes being destroyed. But you do not hear, in the same way as you hear of farmers' suicides, the sort of suicides that might be taking place in the urban, because there is a certain kind of grit that makes them go back to this. Now, for me, this was also a photographic project. Here you have the traditional perspectival view, Renaissance view from slightly taken above, and then you get a depth of field. So in the original, this is almost 20 feet by 60 feet, and it is all made of collection of garbage of all kinds, which I collected. But this, very few Indian artists have used a kind of set in the studio to create a photograph. And my interest in photography made me think that what are the different kinds of views that are there. And in this project, you will see three kinds of views. One is this perspectival view, which has the foreground and then the depth, and this is the lower half of it. And so this lower front half is what I call kind of ground zero. This is a site which is very familiar but slightly poeticized or with color, of when the homes of the poor are destroyed, and you see the brickbats of things and everything asunder, and some sense of the ground plan of what might have been that home. Adjoining it is, you can sort of read into it, the left-hand side, it looks like a lot of congestion of what could be an industrial waste of things coming together, and then to the left of that are just milk bags, very light and floating. And in the center, I have what I call my central path, or my Rajpath, and you have this procession with a tractor and all sorts of things going below this long red beam, which then is already suggesting that there is a kind of new building, a new city, a new scale that will emerge. And here, of course, in master plan, you recognize this is the same thing, but taken from a top angle view, a plan view, as the architects would know, or in today's world, the Google view, so the aerial view. And this view obviously flattens everything out. It makes it decorative and ornamental, and it also refers to, in the history of modern art, how modern art started flattening the image and got interested in the pattern, the ornament, and the grid. And so this was very conscious that this portion which is at the back, you saw, you do not see in the perspectival view. But I knew that I was going to take this shot from above. Of course, there were 14 shots taken in a Hasselblad, but with the Photoshop tool, I could straighten that beam and join all the parts to make it one. So it's exhibited. I think it was shown in the Kiran Nadar Museum thing. It's 17 feet long. So the 60-foot length installation is then now reduced to that size. And so this interest in detail, in fragment, continues through the rest of the works. Now here is the second part of the intervention, or the third, is the digital manipulation. So it looks real, but if you start looking carefully, this is a false perspective. These are 2 or 3 shots which have been joined together. And then you realize that this is a fake perspective. It can't proceed like that. And you find that the same object, or the same thing, is actually seen in 2 places. One is bigger and one is smaller. But when you first see the photograph, you think, oh, this is some top angle view of an urban scape. And in the same way, just as I had, thousands of things in my studio, and I sort of used to use the word that this is a palette. And this whole thing on the floor was some big painting or mural that I was doing. And so you pick up a bit of texture and object. But here through Photoshop, all these elements, if I wanted to fill the space up, I would fill it up, I would extend that beam, I would repeat here, you'll also see some of these items. So here, of course, this is a very popular and poignant image, and you will decide yourself what it could refer to, but maybe a few hundred cans of cold drink become, tens and thousands. And so how the lying by the digital tool as opposed to the traditional analog photograph that tells you the truth, that it's possible by the lie to tell, in a sense, a new truth. Now, as I mentioned, that the aspect of fragility, of things being unstable in so much of our environment, and that instability, that fragility which people live with, but my interest in how their relationship to material, to things, to objects, do not go away. It's well known that all this thing, garbage lies there, and they quickly collect it, and they say, either in the same place we'll build our homes again, or they will carry that and start using that as the basis for making the work. And the word recycling is very fashionable, and artists have recycled, and recycling is also a term which is part of our whole ecological environment. And I think that this aspect of the hand getting to the object, getting to the material, and putting it back together also has so many analogies in the history of modern art. And so this bit of the installation, in each of the installation videos you've seen, they are about 1/3 of the original. And here what I am showing is the collapse of this. So finally these things, these objects, by fog machines, by wind, they start collapsing and falling. And so again the comment or the metaphor that that all that is solid melts into air will collapse. But it is not about doom and failure, but it is about how the human will return and keep on making this this world back again. And of course the bird is there because a lot of my interest is in the top angle aerial view. And if I give a bit of personal anecdote, me and my sister inherited a house in Kasoli, so I use the word to the commissioner here that we look down, and he says, you don't look down at Chandigarh, you see it from above, and he was right. So there is this, has interested me in my painting also, of seeing things from above, but also bringing something very closely up front. So the tension between nearness and distance, between things and objects moves through. And how, as you can see, I mean, I'm able to construct little narratives that you move through certain kinds of textures, or you move here and immediately this is today's age of the computer, and how in the gray area in places like India or the third world, how these are being constantly like refashioned and reused, and the way mysteriously things collapse. And the quotation that you have here, I'll let you read it and then I'll tell you where it's from. You can put that music on. It's Jalaluddin Rumi. This will now end the sequence, and again the aspect of the discarded object, the fragment, and here in this case this is this port town called Muziris, about 30 kilometers north of Kochi, which was a port town engaged with trade with the Roman Empire from 1st century BC to 3rd century AD, and is supposed to have just disappeared, or did disappear, for 800 years. And it's only about 15 years ago that they think that this town called Pattanam, this village called Pattanam, was the site where Muziris was, because they found Roman amphora vases and the designs on them, plus lots of other items, beads, gold, coins, etc. And the director of the excavation, not an archaeologist but a historian, Professor Cherian, used the word, we have 4 million discarded shirts. So I said, we are on the same page because my last show was called Trash, and I'm very interested in the throwaway, the discarded element. And I went and saw it, and I was so moved because you are 2,000-year-old pottery shards have a kind of patina, a sensuousness, which was just a delight. Like a child, I said, I held them. I said, I'm going to make, like children build castles in the air. And I have built a kind of quite spectacular both city and landscape with something like 100,000 of these little pieces. But that's a drop in the ocean to the 4 million that are there. And this is for the Biennale, where, as I said, I created this, which was initially to be a set for the video, which you will see. But so many of the artists who were there said, this is so wonderful, you cannot remove this. So with some negotiation with the curators, it is now next to Subodh Gupta's work. So this is roughly about 18 feet in width and 36 feet across. And the whole thing, as you can see, from the top looks like a ruin. It looks like desolate, that there is nothing here, just a graveyard in a manner of speaking. And in a sense, anything that you dig up from the earth as fragments, it is a graveyard. But that capacity, as I said earlier on, to bring the fragment together, to use that word, the accumulation of the fragment, and by bringing the word capital. So in a sense, this is my capital, and how through that capital and its coming together, you can allow the imagination, whereas in the earlier work, there were every different kind of thing which were there in the world, which you could recognize. Here, this is abstraction, and that interest in a way of form and abstraction, which so eloquently dear friend Nasreen Mohammadi, surrounded by all these figurative artists, did, that aspect of formalism and abstraction also deeply interests me. And if, as I said, that I have political perspectives, I'm interested in history and memory, but the way that something is brought together and the way that it transforms in an imaginative way, in a spatial way, for the viewer to wonder, what is this? Is it all a ruin? Has something been built and been constructed? So the relationship between collapse and construction, which even in relationship to the earlier work was there. And then I did what I am calling a performance on this set. This is slightly different because I've used what's called a green chroma effect, which now is sort of covered up, which I can then put in video in it. I let in water into this set, and so the relationship between this place being flooded, being being silted, being destroyed by a deluge, a tsunami. There are a lot of speculations about it, that why did it disappear? But the fact that it was a port town, and therefore the relationship between water and terra is the terracotta, what that equation is, deeply interested me. And so this performative, narrative, in a sense, element in the work, which people love this work, and in fact, many people seem to have preferred the physical installation to the video. But you are, of course, I must tell you that this is about 42 feet across, and it's projected onto the ground. So when you enter the room, you look down, and the 42 feet you can't fully see from one end to the other end. So you do have to move a little bit, and I wanted very much the viewer, unlike in most videos, you either sit on a stool or you stand in one place and then you walk out when you're bored with it or you don't have time. And in a way, this work is also about slow time, because in a sense it's about memory, and how memory through metaphor, through bizarre transformations. Now you will see a detail of this, but this black, because this port town grew because of pepper, black pepper, and has been referred to by historians like Romila Thapar of calling it black gold, because that was in a sense the exchange. So it's both a kind of preservative as well as for spices. And so I filled the thing with water, and then I found the cheap pepper floats, good quality sinks. And so I got it at half the price. And 15 kilos of pepper, I flooded the whole place and covered it. And it creates a kind of very bizarre landscape. And at the end, I put this clay water, and this slowly moves, and you can see it looks like a still, but bit by bit, you'll see that the peppercorn is moving. Now, that was the 45 feet across, but I thought you don't get a sense of what the detail is. So these are just clips from it of the single video that's projected that you saw earlier on. Yes, that's right. People will suddenly walk on it. You're right. Yeah. So here again, like in the earlier work, as I said, the different perspectives, and again the low angle shot, you get the scale, becoming much larger physically, much more of a presence, and then the top angle shot, and then it's a tracking shot, flattens the whole thing out, and because this water is moving so slowly, you think that it's complete stillness. And this interest in what I call slow time is what this work is about. And thank you. By this method, I could very perfectly stick to my 28 minutes.
Time is cyclical, no? As Dr. Goswami would tell, because I've seen a little small video made on him by a very gifted artist whose film we saw some time back, Nansukh Amit Datta. He's spoken about time, which, when it comes out, when we would understand about time better. Thank you, Vivanji. What a wonderful experience.